Thanks for joining us. Happy Friday to you. I'm Marlon Bowling, your tour guide to the ag commodities. Well, it's Friday, and we're going to take a look at the overnight trade, but I have some new information that just came right off of the wire a moment ago. And finally, we have some overnight export sales business to talk about. What is it this time? Well, you might be a little bit surprised. It is a sale of soybeans, but the biggest amount is not to China. It's actually to, drum roll please, Spain. Spain bought soybeans, 198,000 tons. How about that? And China did buy some more beans, 126,000 tons worth overnight. So we finally got that export mill rolling a little bit here last night. However, you wouldn't know it by looking at the overnight trade. Let's look at our futures in the Globex market, and our quotes are provided by bar chart. Corn was down 2 3/4 this morning at 6.79 1/2. That'd be a penny and a half off of our low of the overnight trade. In that soybean market, we were weaker. You had November down 6 1/4, and it was at 13.76. January down 6 3/4 at 13.86 3/4. Now let's move on to the wheat market. In Chicago, December, we were 8 lower this morning at 8.30 1/2. That's a full dime basically off of our overnight high. In Kansas City, wheat, that December contract dropped 11 cents at 9.21 1/4 this morning after a high last night of 9.34 1/2. Spring wheat trade in Minneapolis had that December contract trading at 9.46 1/4. That was down 4 1/4 cents. In the cotton market, cotton, you had the December contract 152 points lower at 73.59 per pound. So the pressure continues there. Now we're in the lower 70s on that cotton trade. It's a good time to bring in Brian Hoops, the president of Midwest Market Solutions, and discuss all this. So we had overnight export sales business, Brian, a couple of them. That's nice to see. When you talk about soybeans coming up on Monday, we have first notice day, right, on the November contracts on the soybeans. So is that going to be a factor today?
Yeah, it probably will be, Marlon. Good morning. If you remember back when we had September deliveries, we went through almost the entire delivery period with no deliveries against September soybeans. And then all of a sudden, the last day, we did see some deliveries. And we are expecting to see some deliveries against the November contract. So anyone that is long going into the weekend is going to be subject to the deliveries of those soybeans. And that's not something you really want to go through. But it's encouraging to see that we had a couple private export sale announcements this morning. It was rumored earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe, that China was in the market for some soybeans, and trade was disappointed Thursday morning when we did not receive that announcement. So hopefully the reverse is true today, that we did receive an announcement that China bought a couple cargoes. Spain was in for about 3 cargoes. And that is going to help us on the opening here this morning. But yeah, going into deliveries, usually the deliveries are heaviest at first, then you absorb them and you kind of rally after the delivery period. So we'll see how the soybeans want to react. But I view this export business as as positive and a real shot in the arm, because we badly need to see some soybean business. Would love to see some corn and wheat exports as well. But so far, that's not really been in the cards.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, Brian, we'll take a break. We'll come back in a moment, and we'll take a look at this livestock side and the outside markets. We'll see what's going on there when we come back. Well, we're back talking with Brian Hoops. Brian, in the overnight trade on the outside markets, let's take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We'll see where it is right now. It's up 125 points. That's interesting, at 32,199. That's on the December futures this morning. So a little bit firmer there. On the U.S. dollar index value, you had December just down 28 points, basically flat. December would still be at 110.425 here this morning. On the energy markets, you had the West Texas Intermediate crude down $1.13 this morning. December priced at $87.95 per barrel. We were watching with interest yesterday the diesel fuel market. That would be your ULSD, they call it, New York Harbor. Ultra low sulfur diesel is what that stands for. You had November actually 9 cents higher at 442.5 overnight, but you had December actually about 0.7 cents weaker at 370. A big disparity between that November, that nearby, and that December contract. So just wanted to point that out. Now, if you look at where we finished yesterday in our livestock trade, you had the live cattle with December down 15 cents. 153.42 was the last trade there. On our quotes provided by bar chart on the feeders, you had the November down 70 cents at 178.12. January was down 80 at 180.45, so a weaker tone yesterday. And then you get to the lean hogs, and it was just a complete washout on the nearby contracts. December down 337 yesterday. It slid all the way down to 85.12 yesterday. Brian, do you see more of that happening today?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the answer is yes, Marlon. We're going to see some more weakness in those hogs. A little follow-through selling, cutout values being down. It really doesn't bode well for the hog market. The biggest test will be yesterday's lows. If we hold that, I think there's a good chance you could see some short covering develop. But if you take those lows out, there's no doubt stops sitting below it. That's really going to pressure the hog market. We've seen some cash cattle trade a couple dollars higher this week. That's supported for the futures, but steer weights were up about 4 pounds. And the futures market, acts like it's a little ready for a bigger correction in here. We've tried to rally at times this week off of this cash news, just really unable to gain any momentum because we've already dialed in a lot of that positive cash news already. And I just wanted to mention one thing about the wheat market is, I left Springfield, drove up to Des Moines, Iowa last night, and the rains that we saw earlier in the week really have helped the wheat crop come out of emergence. It's coming out of the ground. You can see it starting to grow a little bit with the rains that are helping this crop. So it was badly needed. There's more in the forecast, depending on what forecast you look at.
Okay. I wanted to point out the beef cutout values that came out yesterday afternoon from USDA. They were higher again. And let's look at what the choice cuts were in that afternoon update. They were priced at $262.49. That was up $1.63. Well, that compares to a week ago when it was $253.62, still running about $9 above that. Selects were up $3.31 yesterday. Well, let's look at our open on the markets. Brian, thank you for the help. I appreciate that. And Suzanne will get everything underway in just a few minutes.